Okay, it isn't always clear how important it is to look at historical responsibilities by nation for where we are in terms of climate change or resource use. But if we are going to be optimistic about climate justice and equity for the future, then having a historical sense of how people have extracted and consumed resources could be useful in making proper planning for the future, including maybe reparations, and this would require defining some sort of a fair share. So this nice paper that came out in Lancet just now in April 2022 provides a framework. So this is a national responsibility for ecological breakdown, a fair shares assessment of resource use over 1970 to 2017. We will see what biotic and abiotic resources are considered in a minute. The abstract is quite telling. Findings of the study are that high-income nations are responsible for 74% of the global excess material use. We'll come back and define this. Driven primarily by the USA at 27% and the EU 28, high-income countries at 25%. China is growing now heavily, so it's responsible for 15% over the same period of global excess material use, and the rest of global south, i.e. the low-income and middle-income countries of Latin America, the Caribbean, Africa, and the Middle East and Asia, is responsible for only 8%. Overshoot in higher income nations is driven disproportionately by the use of abiotic materials, whereas in lower income nations it is driven disproportionately by the use of biomass. So it's basically hunger, survival, and such. So national fair share at any time t here is defined by the boundary at that time multiplied by national population divided by global population. Since this is non-stationary, there are constant geopolitical things happening, like the birth of East Pakistan into Bangladesh, for example, and its population as a fraction of global population, and other countries along the way as well. And then national overshoot at time t is defined by national resource use minus the national fair share, where the fair share is defined, we will see in a minute. Oops, that's the fair share there, sorry. And national responsibility is defined over 1970 to 27 of the national overshoot divided by the global overshoot. I know we have already seen calculations which say that humanity is using already more than 1 Earth worth of production, and if we continue this way we will need multiple Earths very soon, and so on. So this is along a similar sense. So here it is in cumulative overshoot in gigatons. So cumulative excess resource use of countries by income group for 1970 to 2017. Excess resource use for low income countries close to zero. We'll see the table next, and thus not visible in this figure at all. This yellow color can hardly be seen, but the high income countries have cumulatively overshot by a lot, and the upper middle income countries are the next big ones. And this has to be now, of course, made more fine in terms of higher income population in a low or lower income, middle income country or upper middle income country, and how they are overshooting the resources and so on. So hopefully that'll come next. Here is the table looking at cumulative overshoot in gigatons and share of the global overshoot. Good to look at this table, especially since countries are listed here. So income groups, high income countries, 74% share of the global overshoot. Upper middle income countries 25%, lower middle income countries at 1%, lower middle income countries at about 1%, and lower low income countries at less than 1%, and the list is what we already said: USA 27%, China at 15%, Japan, and so on. We said Europe 28 is at 25%, so we have left this out here since it's not a country. Okay, so keep that in mind, and then look at the evolution over time of the share of responsibility for excess resource use by a region. So there is US, which has always been at that level of cumulative overshoot. So maybe that's good news or bad news, depending on how you think about the usage, because the Chinese share of cumulative overshoot has grown in the last couple of decades as its economy grows, and Europe plus UK has shrunk its share here. Maybe US has done something similar as well. And the rest of the global south remains down here, but it's going up, it's growing as well, as we said, because and here is rest of Europe and high income countries in the middle. So obviously in a country like India, high income population will be doing quite a bit of consumption as well. This also is relevant for per capita carbon footprint, for example, which we have discussed before. The mean annual overshoot per capita of the 15 largest absolute overshooters, again, without worrying about the socioeconomics within a country. Australia comes out top in this metric of per capita overshoot. Canada and USA are up there, and then you have the rest. Netherlands, Germany, Saudi Arabia is oil-rich country, so remains here. Japan used to be the second largest economy, maybe now it's at third or fourth after China, and France, UK, and China is down here. Brazil shows up, India doesn't show up, but again, that can be misleading because the richest, top rich population in India would be consuming in similar ranges in terms of tons of overshoot per capita. So tons per capita here of the mean annual material used by country income group. So we are now going into country income groups over the same period relative to the mean annual per capita boundary at 7.7 tons per capita. Does it make sense to average over the whole population to do this? Well, gives you a sense of who is way above. So high income is way above this in terms of tons per capita of average of 7.7 tons. So if you wanted to think of equity and justice for the future, maybe you can let these come up and have some way of bringing these down so that everybody is here, like allowing everybody like a 10 ton per year carbon footprint, for example, where the rich have to cut down their carbon footprint and the poor can be allowed to come up. So those kind of global governance issues may become manageable at some point, but maybe not. So let's see. Okay, so this is the regional responsibility for cumulative excess resource use. Aggregate at 50 gigaton per year, so multiply these by 50. Biotic and abiotic. So here biotic resource use comprises biomass, so grains, fish, forests, whatever else. Abiotic resource use comprises metals, non-metallic minerals, and fossil fuels. So USA is up here at 27%, EU plus UK at 25%. Rest of Europe and high income countries at 24%, China at 15%, and rest of the global at 8%. Split that into biotic and abiotic. You have 20% for USA and 28% in the biotic and abiotic. Europe, EU plus UK is 22 and 25. China is at 3% in the biotic and 18% in the abiotic. So its growing economy is consuming a lot of these metals, non-metallic minerals, and fossil fuels. And there is the rest of the global south. So it gives you a different sense of how materials, biotic and abiotic, are being exploited by different countries, and over this recent decades from 1970 to 2017, how economic development of China is beginning to play out, and how US, Europe and UK have stayed high on their overshoot of biotic and abiotic resource consumption. Doesn't necessarily tell you how to bring this under control or how to redistribute the resources more equitably. And considering there is a global overshoot, it's good to look at all the contributors, the dominant ones. But as I said, then further treaties or whatever way we're going to try to deal with this, we'll have to maybe go by income groups independent of the countries, so that all income groups above a certain per capita GDP can be brought down in their resource consumption, biotic and abiotic, and those with lower middle incomes and low incomes can be allowed to come up. How will this happen? Obviously not very clear, but having this kind of a metric and having a look at what is happening does give us a framework on how to think about it, in addition to the per capita carbon footprint, right? So let's leave it there.